And we turn to our series on the national conversation surrounding guns, violence, and mental health in the wake of the Connecticut shootings. Public officials and other critics have raised concerns about the role of media and culture, particularly violent video games.
Well, do violent video games cause violence? It is a question that has been raised for several years, especially following mass shootings.
Violent video games have encouraged the killing of innocent people for sport.
These video games, to me, are murder simulators is what they are, and it's very dangerous, John, very dangerous.
Sells and stows violence against its own people through vicious, violent video games. Isn't fantasizing about killing people as a way to get your kicks really the filthiest form of pornography?
A Republican lawmaker from rural Missouri is this week calling for a sales tax on violent video games in response to the deadly Connecticut school shooting. The proposed 1% sales tax would help pay for mental health programs and law enforcement measures aimed at preventing mass shootings. The tax would be levied on video games rated teen, mature, and adult only by the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, the organization in charge of rating video games. Even the NRA has pointed the finger at the video game industry and its role in mass shootings.
What is it? Is this about gun control, or is this about a guy that has a history of drinking a lot, playing video games a lot, and a few shooting incidents? He's got a friend who said, yeah, he had an obsession with video games, shooting video games. In fact,
are more people maybe more susceptible than others to playing video games? Is there a link between a certain age group or demo in 20 to 34-year-old men, perhaps, that are playing these video games, and then their violent actions?
You know, it seems like every time something bad like this happens, we look at, is there a connection between video games and the shooter? Well, take a look at some people who were described as addicted to video games. From Columbine High School, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the Virginia Tech shooter, the Arizona shooter, Jared Lee Lofner, that Norway shooter, Anders Bering, I think he shot 77 people, the Aurora shooter, James Holmes, the Sandy Hook shooter, Adam Lanza. They're all described as essentially being addicted to video games.
A Texas teen who faces up to 8 years in prison for a joke he made over an online video game. In February, 19-year-old Justin Carter, seen here, got into an argument with a friend on Facebook while playing something called League of Legends. I wouldn't know. I read books. According to his father, after another player called him crazy and messed up in the head, a compliment, the boy wrote back, quote, "Oh yeah, I'm real messed up in the head. I'm going to go shoot up a school full of kids and eat their still beating hearts." And the next two lines were LOL, don't know what that means, and JK, meaning it was just a joke, Keith. But a Canadian woman who saw the post looked up Carter's address, saw it was near an elementary school, called the cops. He was arrested a month later and charged with making terroristic threats and has been in jail ever since.
Marks the 2-month anniversary of the Gamergate movement. Depending on who you ask, Gamergate represents two very different things. Supporters say it's about a lack of ethics in video game journalism, but it's also spawned attacks on women in the games industry. Game developer Zoe Quinn told me about threats of death and sexual violence on this very program. Another developer, Brianna Wu, had to flee her home after threats, and game commentator Anita Sarkeesian canceled a speech after similar threats.
Gamergate, a shocking debate about sexism in the gaming industry that you might not have heard of, but that has already spawned 1 million tweets and counting to the Gamergate hashtag. It's an online battle of the sexes over how gamers are portrayed and the sometimes violent reaction to women who speak out.
This is actually attacks on women. Like, game ethics in journalism is not what's happening in any way. It's actually men going after women in really hostile, aggressive ways. That's what Gamergate is about.
In the sense of why these male gamers are so angry, what is the source of the kind of rage in some of these attacks?
That in the past, nerd culture and gamer culture, it was marginalized. It was considered, you know, this geeky thing, these losers in their basement, and that the culture got stronger because they rejected outsiders. They rejected the people who told them they were wrong. Hey, there's a problem with your culture, and their reaction is an overreaction. It's to lash out and to violently reject any sort of perceived threat to who they are.
It's going public with her criticism of the industry. Sarkeesian says angry gamers have smeared her reputation, violated her personal life, and most alarmingly, threatened her safety, but also that you have a critique. How in the world does that end up with death threats and bomb scares? Sarkeesian and other women who work and write about the industry say they've been threatened, intimidated, and terrified by a seemingly endless wave of anonymous threats from what they suspect are extremist members of a male-dominated gamer community.
I think gamers have, like Tea Partiers, established themselves through their identity as people who are fundamentally downtrodden. So the implication when they're critiqued by feminists that they are anything but leaves them blind with rage.
There is a section of mostly male gamers who are fighting against that, who are trying to preserve the status quo of gaming as a male-dominated space. And their reaction is often in these ways that you were just describing, violent, threats of violence, attacking our character, trying to discredit us, threats to, misogynist and sexist slurs, all of those sorts of things.
So